It is an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. Having read about your accomplishments, I must say that you truly live up to your nickname, Dynamo. Can we begin by you telling us a little bit of, what's the story behind the nickname?
Hey, Liz, thanks so much for having me on your show. It's so great to be here. Dynamo, Sonia Dynamo Price, Dynamo Careers. The name Dynamo actually originally came to me in a dream. This is way back when I was starting my business and I was trying to think about, okay, what's the right name for career coaching and people who want to have a really amazing, extraordinary career. And, this was back in the early 2000s when like only .com was available. And so I was searching for .com names on GoDaddy, and every name that I could think of, I would look it up and it was taken. And then one night I was sleeping and, maybe like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I had this name that I feel like it had just been like given to me or something. And I was like, Dynamo, like Dynamo Careers. Wow, that sounds cool. So of course I get up, boot up my computer, check it out, and it's like available. I feel like the angels were singing. It was like, yes, here's the name for your business. And since then, I've researched like, what is a dynamo? And, like oftentimes we hear people say like, oh, she's a real dynamo or he's a dynamo, which generally means just like a very dynamic and interesting and engaging person, somebody who like really creates big results in life. But also like dynamo as a scientific thing is a device. And you can think of this as like, when you pedal your bike and there's the light that is charged by you move your feet around and the light kicks on. And the cool thing about dynamos is that it's a sustainable source of energy. So if you pedal, you put in a little bit of pedaling, you kickstart that light and that light fires off, then sometimes you can actually coast for a little while and the light will continue to shine. So I see this as a really wonderful, analogy for coach and coachee, or, you could even think of it as like spirit and human form of like, what are the ways that we engage with dynamos in our own life where, sometimes we have to put in the initial effort to overcome inertia. But then once that inertia has been overcome, how can we continue to let the light shine without having to put in so much exerted effort?
I absolutely love that. I am an analogy metaphor person. So as you were saying that, I'm like, yes. And you're right. It's, having that momentum and
Uh-huh.
building yourself up for success. And then just, like I said, you can coast a little bit, but it's putting your energy into, I always say, your strengths. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a great way to kickstart our conversation. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for sharing that. I'm like, I have to ask her about her nickname.
Thank you.
So, you've been doing this for a long time and you have a mission of supporting professionals in finding meaning, balance, and better pay, which is truly inspiring. So, what drove you to focus on these particular areas in working with clients and just giving back?
Yeah, when I look at professionals and what people are really striving for, it's like I kind of have this trifecta that I focus on with people. And so one is, how do we help people find work that they love? Something that's truly meaningful and satisfactory and really helps allow them to have the kind of impact that they want to make during their time on this planet or their time working in their career. So I would say like first and foremost, that's like the number one priority and the driver of what I really try to help people do. But then we also need to make sure that we're being paid well for the work that we do. And then the third component is, does that candidate or client have the skills to back it up? So I'm kind of looking for the sweet spot in the intersection of these 3 points of, is it meaningful? Does it pay well? And do we have the skill set and the qualifications and the eligibility to be able to help that individual land the kinds of jobs that they want? And even if you don't have all the skill set, like right now here today, oftentimes what I do with clients is help you put together a career roadmap and a pathway and a trajectory to help you get to your ultimate goal. And then we'll start to put together like short, medium, and long-term career goals so that you can get where you want to go in a much more expedient manner.
Yeah, no, I think having that framework and just an idea, those action steps, but you come up with, with good points about, finding that meaningful career path, but also aligning with your skills and just having a plan of action, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so in your experience, and I speak from, my experience working with different types of professionals, a lot of people struggle with, even with the job search,
Mm-hmm.
and having all these things in mind, right? So pay, alignment with skills. But what are some of the biggest mistakes that you have found that
Mm-hmm.
people make when they approach their job search journey?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that I see for professionals is that maybe they're just not being strategic enough. Most of us work inside of jobs where, the company, the department, the team, we're doing annual planning and quarterly planning and monthly planning and weekly planning, and then we go back to check to see, did we actually achieve the results that we desired? But how often do we as individuals do that for our own career? And so one of the biggest challenges or mistakes that I see that professionals make is that when they're looking to change jobs, most often they just try to keep doing the same thing that they were already doing. And so instead of pursuing a stretch role or something new and different that will be engaging and interesting and challenging in a good way for them, I oftentimes see people just kind of say, oh, well, I don't really know what I want to do, or I'll just keep doing the same thing I've always done, or maybe I'll even take a step back because, I'm burnt out and I just want something different. But I think if we actually take the time to have that care-filled thought and a really strategic approach, and we're actually building out a real full-fledged roadmap for ourselves, then we can live into that reality and actually take the action steps that matter to help, continuously progress and make forward momentum towards something new and better and different. And, that then when you have this very strategic approach, you get to take on more leadership roles, you get to work on more strategic projects, you get to, grow your skill set in areas that maybe you might not have had an opportunity to otherwise. Then you can stay in demand in the market, keep your skills fresh, be an in-demand candidate, and have a greater impact in your career. You get to have, cause bigger results with the work that you do.
Yeah, no, those are some great points, and I like that you say, it's having that roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
People are in the job search process for a number of reasons, whether it's to take on that leadership role, they're ready for that next career move, or they've just experienced a layoff. And so a lot of times people just jump into that job search. And you're right, I feel like I find this a lot where people will, it's like a hamster wheel where they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, but then there they are applying for the same
Right.
jobs. And so I
Yeah.
think it kind of speaks to what you're saying, is really having that plan of action or that roadmap. What are some tangible um examples or ideas for people to take on prior to actually launching that job search? So how can someone be intentional where they're like, okay, before I just start applying to anything and everything, what are some tangible things that people can do? And speaking about like reflection, like what do people need to do
Mm-hmm.
before they even take that leap?
Yeah. I always so like first and foremost, look to see what are all the available options for you and what do you actually want to be pursuing. And then, when I work with clients, I have a very very targeted list of decision-making criteria. So, this is a big decision. When you're going to make a career change, it's a big decision. So what is your evaluation criteria for identifying what is the right thing for you moving forward? So we can look at things like compensation, like that's an easy one because usually there's lots of data available out there online. You can look at the available job titles of what you're looking at, and then understanding and researching what is the associated comp range for those particular titles as well. And even if you were like, let's say a really, kind of basic example, like a project manager, even if you were to go to a senior project manager, well, sometimes you're going to be making 10, 20, 30, up to $50,000 more just by going up into a more senior level role. Or if you were to target it more specifically, maybe it's a technical project manager, or, something that's like, more in alignment with something that might pay more. Then you can start to look at, okay, what are the skill sets that they're looking for in this particular position? Like, this position tends to pay more. It's interesting to me. I'd like to do it. What does the job description say? And what are the skill sets of what it's asking for? And do I have that skill set? Or could I quickly learn that skill set to be eligible and qualified for that position? And then, then it's a matter of looking to see, how do you position yourself in the right way so that you do appear as eligible and qualified for those roles, and that you're going to automatically get noticed and recognized and called for an interview. That's all ultimately what we're looking for, is to get the interview, do well in the interview, and then get the offer.
Yeah, so taking inventory of your skills, but also doing your research and what is out there, what are the skills in demand, and taking a look at those higher level positions before actually taking a leap or making that pivot. So that's a great, I think, that's a great starting point. In your experience working with, thousands of job seekers, what are some creative job search techniques that you have used with clients that have led to job interviews?
Yeah, there's a number of different things that we can think about when we talk about creative job search techniques. There's a number of different things, right? So, I think most people know, okay, go to the job boards, look for the jobs, apply for the jobs. But most jobs get between 200 and 400 applicants for a single position. So you really got to be like top talent to get recognized in that way. Things that you can do is, networking. I know we all talk about networking, but networking really can be super helpful and wonderful. So you want to be finding people who work inside of that organization and asking for referrals. So if you're going to apply for a job internally, actually try to connect with people who work there first to ask, would you be willing to refer me in for this open position? And if so, what does that process look like? Like, should I go ahead and apply for the job on my own? And then you can contact the recruiter and say, you know me and you'd like to refer me for that position, or do you want to be the one to refer me in? And oftentimes people are actually very motivated to do this, because generally they will get if you get hired, generally they'll get a referral bonus. After you've worked there for 90 days or whatnot, then, they get, X amount of dollars on their next paycheck, or they get a bonus of some sort. And these are not usually small numbers either. It kind of depends upon the company and the job title, but, I've seen this pay anywhere from $500 to $5,000 for a new candidate to get hired. So networking is really crucially important. And if you don't already know people in that organization, that's okay. You may just need to work a little bit harder to find somebody. So we have this wonderful tool out there called LinkedIn. You may have heard of it. It's a wonderful search database, and you can just start going to look for, people that ideally you want to get in touch with somebody who's as closely connected to the hiring position as possible. So, if it's a project manager position, try to look for people that have project management titles, because then that would be a peer of yours that would be hiring you in. And if it's a really large company, then try to find somebody who's going to be in the specific department that's hiring for that role. Or if you can find the hiring manager, even better, right? It's like if you can get direct contact with the hiring manager. Now, there is a little bit of a numbers game to this strategy here, but it can be if you're willing to put a little bit of extra effort and work into it, it can be a very rewarding tactic. So that would be like a number one, creative job search strategy. I think a common one that often gets, left out is really having the right mindset and the right intention behind it, because I work with so many people that are so filled with fear that it stops them in their tracks from taking action. And if you get your mindset in the right place and you really set your goals and your intentions and you live from that space, I'm just such a firm believer in energy. And that it's like, if you're attracting those right things to you and you're coming from the right space and you're taking actions from the right space, I believe that doors will be opened to you. So if the whole LinkedIn strategy that we just talked about, if you approach it and you're scared and you're saying like, oh, this is dumb, nobody will ever, connect with me anyways, then, is that the right energy for people to connect with you? Versus if you're like, hey, you know what, I'm super motivated, I'm really excited, I can't wait to connect with my future colleagues. Like, let's go. Let's find some good people to talk to and see what we can make happen. And then, activate your network. Like if you already have a network, great, use it to your advantage. If you don't have the network, it's okay, but take the time to build it now.
So many helpful nuggets of information here. I'm like trying to dissect everything. So one of the things that you said that I'm like, yes, I think people forget about this is when you mentioned how in some organizations there are those referral bonuses.
Mhm.
And then the other thing too is I know I've been asked like, oh, do you know anyone for this role? Because it's a needle in a haystack, right? It goes both ways where
Mhm.
the employer is looking for a good candidate, the candidate is looking for a good a good employer, and it's
Mhm.
like it just makes the relationship so much easier and faster to make those connections. So definitely tapping into the people that already work in the organization. And then the other piece that you said that really resonates is the mindset and not creating those barriers for yourself. Don't close those doors on yourself. And I think there's that fear of rejection.
Mhm.
And that's part, like you said, it's a numbers game and that's going to be part of it. But I
Mhm.
really love that encouragement of put that positivity out there. There are people that are going to be willing to talk to you. And
Mhm.
that's going to increase your chances of getting in like to what we call the hidden job market, that goes beyond the hundreds of applications or competing with 100+ applicants. So those are some really important points. Thank you for sharing those. Now you talk about networking, right? So that's part of it. Networking, tapping into your network, or not being afraid to reach out to others. What are some other networking strategies that people can take to expand their professional connections, connecting with people that, with strangers, if you will?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we've talked all about LinkedIn. I can't stress the importance of LinkedIn enough. And you actually growing your network inside of LinkedIn can be super helpful and advantageous for you no matter what. Because even just getting more connections, being active on LinkedIn will usually help you show up higher in the search results. So if if like a recruiter is coming to LinkedIn to search for someone that has your skill set, the more active that you are on LinkedIn, the more likely that you are to show up higher in the search results. So, be active on LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to reach out to strangers, build connections, ask for help, like get out there. But now we can talk about like who are the different types of people that you would want to engage with. So you could engage with people in your network, which could be friends, family, people you went to college with, etc., people you used to work with. You can reach out and build new connections with people who are in the organizations that you want to be working for. The more closely that they are aligned to the job that they're hiring for is better. So a peer, or a hiring manager, maybe even higher up the leadership chain, although those folks are generally pretty busy, so they're not as likely to respond as others. And then we can talk about like recruiters. So there is differences with recruiters out there. If you try to reach out to an in-house recruiter, someone who works for an organization that you want to work for, most of the time those folks are not going to respond to you. Or even if they do, they're just going to say, hey, if there's an open position on the website, apply for it. If you're a good fit, someone will contact you. But then there's agency recruiters, and agency recruiters are trying to fill open positions for organizations. Those folks are probably much more likely to be willing to talk to you. And when you're doing this, you need to make sure that you know your audience. So a lot of recruiting agencies will be targeted on a specific type of function or industry or whatnot, right? So you want to go find recruiters who look for people like you, who look for people who have your skill set, and then build a relationship with them. And, ideally keep that relationship alive for a period of time over your career. because, when it's just transactional, it's just like, hey, I need a job. Can you help me right now? Sometimes you're going to hit the jackpot and there's just the stars are going to align. They'll be like, yes, I have an open role for you right now. This is awesome. This is amazing. But sometimes you need to establish a connection and then keep on their radar for a period of time. And if you find interesting ways to keep on people's radar, and this could be with recruiters, this could be with hiring managers, this could be with potential influential people that you want to stay connected with, but like finding ways to stay on their radar. So reaching out, connecting, asking how you can help and support them. If you are in a position where if you're a hiring manager inside an organization, giving business to that recruiter over time, then when you come calling to them, then they're going to, oh yeah, absolutely. Let me help you. You've helped me. Let me help you. So that's a really big thing about networking that most people don't really pay attention to, is that it really does need to be a two-way street. So if you're always the one reaching out and saying, gimme, can you help me, help me, help me? But it's like, what are you offering in return? Or sometimes can you show up with an offer first and then ask later? So sometimes networking doesn't always happen overnight, and I think that that's a big challenge, is that, we want results quickly. We want people to just step in and say, yep, I'm your person. I'm going to help you right now. But sometimes networking, it has to be built over time, and it can require some patience, but you really want to be, thinking about this and actively building this as a component of your overall career success. So one of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was build your network before you need it.
Yes.
So, that can be hard when you're searching for a job because you need it right now. So don't let it stop you, because you can still get successful results, but don't stop. Like, continue networking and continue building your connections over a period of time, and find ways to be of value to people so that when you have an ask, they're there to help you as well.
That was like the biggest takeaway from that example, right? Is building the network before you need it. It's ongoing. It's always, right? I've heard people say like, oh, well, I don't need to network because I'm not looking for a job. But it's like, well, like you said, it's a two-way street. And I always encourage people, if you can volunteer or serve on a panel, like you said, it's about being of service, because then you are visible and people can speak to your, to your willingness, to your initiative. So really positioning yourself. Now, I'm going to ask a little, I'm going to kind of dig a little deeper here. Let's say it is someone that's like, I do have that urgency and I want to be more of like the cold calling approach when connecting with talent acquisition, right? So there, like you said, that are third party, that are on LinkedIn or even on Twitter or other social media platforms. What are some strategies that people can use in actually reaching out to a recruiter that is actively hiring? What are some ways? I know it's kind of a basic question, but I think sometimes people are even afraid to take that step for the fear of rejection, or they're not going to answer my question.
Yeah. So if it's a like agency recruiter, most of the time you go to their website and they already have like a mechanism for you to upload your resume and kind of like get into their database. So I usually suggest that as a first step, because some recruiting agencies, they have a mechanism for intaking new clients, new candidates, and then maybe they kind of cross compare with open positions and then they'll contact you. So, I usually say, like, start with that as a first step. Go ahead and upload your resume and put your information in there. And then a couple days later, follow up with a phone call if you can, and ask to be connected with a recruiter. Like, get on a call, say a little bit about who you are, what you do, what kinds of roles that you're looking for, and ask, what do you have available right now? And then, if they have stuff available, they're most likely going to want to, get you in as quickly as possible. Because as soon as you get hired, they get paid. So there is a big incentive for them. But, so try that, and then keep following up with them. Like, make sure you have all their contact information, have their email address, their phone number and whatnot. lots of people are, not doing phone calls as much anymore. So, email may be the best method of communication. You can even ask them what's your preferred method of communication. And then, keep reaching out once a week, once every 2 weeks, reach out. Hey, just wanted to circle back, curious if you have any other open roles and that would be a good match for someone like me. Remind them who you are, remind them what your top skill set is, right? So they may have your resume on file, but if you just pretend like they know who you are and they automatically know what your top skill set is and what you've done in your career, most recruiters are super busy. They're constantly talking, they talk to 10 plus candidates a day, and it's like they talk about numbers game. Like recruiters are just constantly, talking to new and different people, and they don't always keep everything straight, and that's okay. So it's your job to remind them of this. And, don't be super verbose, but just keep it nice, short and sweet. Have like a couple sentences, hey, as a reminder, this is a little bit more about who I am. And, just stay on top of the radar as much as you can. And don't be afraid to follow up. I think a lot of people say, oh yeah, well, I emailed them and I never heard back. That's okay. Like, have you ever gotten an email and you never responded? And then someone followed up with you 2 weeks later and they were like, hey, just checking to see if you got my email. And you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the follow-up. I've been so busy. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. Yes, let's have lunch or whatever. Same thing, do this and don't take it personally if people don't immediately respond to you. Like, follow up. That's your job as the job seeker, to follow up, and don't take it personally if you're not getting responses. If you send enough communication, I bet you'll probably get some sort of response at some point in time.
That makes sense. I think you're right. I love the follow up, and people are just like, oh, I don't want to bother, or they just, they're not interested. But sometimes, yeah, that email falls through the cracks. So I think it's worthwhile. So emphasizing the importance of following up. Now,
the other thing, if I may say this too, is like, you never know when the timing is going to align perfectly right. And so it's like, sometimes it's just being in the right place at the right time. Sometimes that looks like your email hitting their inbox at the right time. So think about that too, that it's like, well, if there were no open roles one week, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any open roles next week. And if you're on the ball and you're continuing to follow up, like eventually things are going to align. And so just stay positive and keep doing the outreach, follow up, and keep a positive attitude about it as well.
Yeah, no, those are some good points. Now, I know we talk a lot about LinkedIn, right? And I think that's definitely a platform that people should be visible, but also being proactive. What are your thoughts on like Twitter and Instagram? Do you think those are good strategies or good platforms to be visible with employers, with recruiters?
I will say I'm not an expert in that arena. What I would say is make sure that your profile is clean. And what I say by that is, like, if someone was to go do a Google search on you and they landed on your Instagram profile, would they look at it and say, yeah, I would love to work with this person? Or would they look at it and say, oh my God, this person is so immature and, I don't like the topics they're talking about. They seem to be very opinionated, or maybe showing too much skin, or, whatnot. I would say for sure that during your job search process, maybe try to clean up your profiles a little bit, go back through and look to see what have you posted and what are you featuring about yourself, and put yourself in the eyes of an employer, that if they were to come to your profile, would they look at it and say, I would love to work alongside this person on a day-to-day basis? Or might there be a little bit of a turnoff? So I don't know that it's a job search tool. I've never used it as a job search tool, not to say that it's not possible. But I think for the types of roles that I typically help people fill, it's going to be more, job boards and LinkedIn and recruiters and, more traditional routes. But be aware of what your online profiles are saying about you. And is that something that would be appealing or detracting for a potential employer?
So the takeaway is being aware of your personal brand in all of your
Mm-hmm.
social media platforms.
Yeah.
But I think that's I appreciate that transparency and you sharing that because I think sometimes it can be overwhelming that there are so many different platforms that you can use for
Mm-hmm.
your job search. And I do hear people using, Twitter with the hashtags. And I know there are employers out there trying to figure out ways to engage with different candidates, but know
Mm-hmm.
your audience and your industry. But I think the main idea is whatever platform you're using that you are putting your best foot forward. But I agree. I think LinkedIn is the way to go. If you want to just really put your energy into one. Um,
Yeah.
Now there are, there's a lot of popularity gaining with AI tools. We
Mm-hmm.
can scratch the surface a little bit and maybe talk a little bit about how job seekers can leverage technology such as chat gpt for their job search. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ChatGPT is a wonderful tool. I've been using it for all kinds of things. You can definitely use it to help with the resume writing process, and make sure you still know the rules of the game, like what should be included in your resume and how to feature yourself appropriately. So make sure that you are, following a standard format. Make sure that you're featuring a lot of real results of different things that you have actually produced in your career. So, ChatGPT is a wonderful tool because oftentimes it can help us find the language that maybe we don't already have for ourselves, but you're going to want to tweak it. You're going to want to customize it. You're going to want to make sure everything is still in the right format. You're going to need to come up with your own work success stories. So you have real, actual factual results listed and embedded in throughout your resume. And you need to make sure everything is keyword optimized. So I mean, maybe ChatGPT is going to progress to the level where it could just you insert a few lines of text and it's going to give you this perfectly formatted resume that's keyword optimized and is like the exact right perfect fit for the job that you're applying for. But I think that we still have a ways to go before we get there, so you still need to follow the standard format. Make sure that like you got to know the rules of the game. The rules of the game is, how does the ATS system look for and scan your resume, and do you have the right things in the right places so that it finds what it needs to find about you to say, yes, a recruiter should take a second look and potentially call you for an interview.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I actually was at an event where employers are like, we know that people are using ChatGPT for resume, cover letter. We encourage it.
Mm.
It definitely can help you refine your bullet points, be concise. But the key thing is to be able to showcase those skills, those quantifiers, those specific
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And I think that's when it helps working with a career coach, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
helping you really pull those accomplishments because ChatGPT cannot do that.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT can help you create something that is strong action verb, based, to like modify the language to be concise, but not to actually create those unique bullet points. So no fluff. And it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
tangible, right?
Right.
Um, and so there are so many different ways. I know I'm like, I need to have an episode specifically on ChatGPT because I think that it can definitely be leveraged for so many aspects of the
Uh-huh.
job search. Uh,
Yeah.
I just wanted to scratch the surface, maybe a little teaser for next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah.
Um, so I know you talked a lot about having, people that have used different strategies in their approach. I would love to hear a success story that you're willing to share of a job seeker that used a creative approach to secure a job offer in a competitive industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely worked with clients who have utilized the LinkedIn strategy that we talked about earlier. I had one client who was like, "Are you sure? Does this thing work? I don't know." He was like super skeptical about it, and then he reached out to somebody, And he was just like, sent out an initial connection request, and he was like kind of playing it safe of like, oh, just wanting to connect with other people in my industry or whatnot. And the person accepted his connection request and replied back and said, actually, we're hiring for an open position that I think you'd be a great fit for. I was just like immediately like, hey, here's the link to the job. So this was the job that he was going to ask for someone to refer him in for. And the guy like, proactively suggested that he would refer him in for. So, that's, we kind of already talked about that strategy, but I have seen that work. Doesn't work 100% of the time, but it does work. So keep trying it. I worked with another client who, he was in a leadership position and was really wanting to secure, he was looking for like a chief of staff role or a director of operations role. And he was looking for, very specific targeted types of positions. And so I worked with him to help develop a script for a video, and we created a recorded video, which he then started sending to prospective employers just to help introduce himself. Because, as a chief of staff, the personality fit is so crucially important. If you're going to be supporting a senior level executive, they're going to be looking for somebody that's like, yeah, I need my number two person. I need a person, my go-to person that can just like, get results and make things happen. So we wrote a very short intro for him, had him do it over a video so that they could see his personality. And then when he reached out to people, he included the video, which I think gave kind of a really nice little pre-introduction that said, okay, hey, yes, this guy seems like he's great. Would love to work with him. Let's have a further conversation.
I love that idea of using a video. It humanizes, right? It goes beyond the resume or even the LinkedIn profile. So it sounds
Yeah,
like
and
it resonated.
video works too, right? We're used to getting text messages and connection requests and all that sort of thing. But when you see a video pop up, you're like, oh, what's this? Yeah, I've got 2 minutes. Let me watch it. So I think, video can oftentimes kind of cut through the clutter more than other types of messages.
And I think it's, also, I just did an episode about stepping out of your comfort zone. I think playing with the technology and using tools that you wouldn't necessarily think of, and
Mm-hmm.
and really thinking about standing out from the crowd, right? So, applying online is just so, it's like the go-to, and you just kind of stay status quo. But when you do things like that, they're a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more, I'm gonna use the word scary, intimidating, daunting.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that really can increase your probability of getting someone's attention. So I
Mm-hmm.
I really like those types of risky
Mm-hmm.
strategies.
Yeah.
You have to create a little chaos. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Uh so, and I think, even people hearing this, right? Like, okay, I've tried, what is innovative? I've tried everything. And people are just feeling discouraged, right? So I've worked with clients that are like, I've been at this for a long time, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
landing any interviews. And they're for a number of reasons. What mindset strategies do you have to help people, maintain that resilience and motivation throughout this process?
Yeah. I know it's so hard, like it can be challenging. It can be very challenging when you're in that job search process, because it can just be a daunting task. And when you apply and apply and apply and you don't feel like you're hearing back, or you're getting ghosted, or you're just, you're not getting interviews, it is tough. It is tough. And I just want to recognize that and acknowledge that. Um, and, it doesn't always have to be tough. So I think, going back to mindset, it's like, what is your mindset about this whole process? Do you believe that it's going to be hard? Do you believe that it's going to take a long time? Or what do you believe? Can you approach the process and say, this is going to be easy? Like, it may take some work, but, I'm a great candidate. And there are lots of companies out there who would be lucky to hire me. And having that mindset can just make a world of a difference in your energy. And I think ensuring that you take really good care of yourself during this time, whatever that means to you, whether that's, making sure you're eating good, nutritious food, you're getting good sleep, you're going to the gym, you're, drinking lots of water, taking time to go for bike rides or go dancing or do whatever gives you joy and brings satisfaction into your life. I think that's really, really, really important, because I think so often, we get into difficult situations in our life and we start to withdraw and we close up, and then it just becomes harder and harder and harder, and we start to work ourselves into, we start to work ourselves into a hole, and the deeper that you get, the harder it is to like come out of that. So just practicing really good self-care through the process so that you can hold your frame in life, I think is just really crucially important. And having the right mindset and the right intentions, the right goals. And sometimes it's a matter of developing a mantra that you carry around with yourself. Like, I do this stuff all the time. I write notes and put them up on my wall. I don't care. People come over to my house and they're like, like I just wrote one up and put it on my wall last night. And I was like, I make excellent decisions, because I made a decision recently that didn't go so well for me. And I've been kicking myself and second guessing myself. And I started to realize, like, I'm feeling really crappy and crummy about this decision. But when I reflect back on it, like, I couldn't have known at that time, and so I've been telling myself, I make horrible decisions. And that's not true. Like, it's so not true. So I have to reverse that pattern for myself. So I made a big thing and I posted it on my wall, and it's like, I make excellent decisions, and so I'm just trying to remind myself of that, because that's a better approach than telling myself, oh, I make horrible decisions, because then where am I coming from when I'm making my next decision, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So developing a mantra. And then, one other thing that I'll say, and I know sometimes this is a bit controversial, but it's like, if you believe in a higher power, activate that higher power during this time. If you pray or meditate or, say affirmations, or however it is that you connect with your creator. And that could even be the highest version of yourself, like however you define higher power, God, divine, whatever it is, the universe, and if you don't believe that, no problem. But if you do, maybe it's time to activate those powers. And I could tell you a real quick story, if I may.
Yeah,
okay. So I have actually, there's been two separate times. So, before I got into doing career coaching, I had like 15 years of experience in corporate. And there were two separate times that I was looking for a job that I just started praying and trying to like activate the higher powers that be. And, and they were times where I was like, oh boy, I need to get a paycheck soon, kind of type thing. And I just had crazy coincidences that opened up. Like, there was a period of time when I had a different business, and that business did not perform so well. And so I kind of had this, realization that I was like, oh boy, I think it's time for me to get a job. And I started praying, and, within like a few days, I had an old contact of mine that I'd met through like a professional networking association. And he called me up out of the blue and he said, hey, Sonia, I know you're really focused on your business right now, but my team just decided to hire a few new headcounts, and you were the first person I thought of. And I was like, oh, interesting. Oh my God, And so he said, yeah, why don't you come have lunch with me and the director? I went to lunch. I actually happen to know the director from like a completely different, different circle. And it just ended up being the easiest process ever. And it was like, by the end of that lunch, I think they had already decided they were going to hire me. And we went, we were going forward with the process, and we had already talked about compensation and everything. And then the director says to me, he calls me up one day and he's like, hey, we're all set. We're good. Your start date is happening here and then and whatnot. And then he's like, hey, by the way, HR is asking me for a copy of your resume. Could you please send me your resume just so we have that on file? Like, I never even applied for the job. And so, and I had another example like that I'd be happy to walk through, but it's like, miracles can happen if you're in the right space, if you're thinking, if you're in the right space, your beliefs are in alignment. And sometimes you don't even have to take the action to make it happen. Just be open and welcoming and accepting. And, if you pray, pray. If you meditate, meditate. But get your energy in the right place. And that might mean praying. It might mean working out. It might mean eating the right foods. It might mean all these different things. So like get yourself in a really grounded place to where, that the energy can align around you and help things happen for you.
Well, as a spiritual person, I agree 110%. Definitely believe in that. And like you said, it's whatever works for you as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really love hearing you say about having that self-care. And that's really important. Like you said, that's the foundation, especially during this when it gets frustrating and you just feel like you want to give up. And then having the self-compassion. So in your example, you're like, I have my post-it notes. So if that's affirmations, whatever that may be, but having that self-compassion and I always say, have your tribe, have your allies, people that are gonna lift you up. Because I think that this transpires in the job search process, whether it be the job interview, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people, they're disgruntled and it could be because they're frustrated, but the recruiter, the person interviewing you, they don't know that. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're networking, you're at an event. And so really taking care of yourself so that you can put your best foot forward, because you never know when you're going to meet that person that's going
You
to
never
open the
know. You
door.
never know. That's very
Absolutely.
true.
I also have like millions of stories like that where I'm like, that's why I'm like, oh, you're going to be okay. But, it's uncertain and it can definitely be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can't predict. But there are these strategies. So thank you so much for taking the time to share many of your strategies and things that have worked with your
Mm-hmm.
clients.
Yeah.
And so you have, a robust website and tools and resources, and you have a free assessment that people can take. Can you talk a little bit about what that assessment entails and
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so it's called the Does Your Work for You career assessment. So if you are questioning, what's next for you and how do you know if your work can actually work for you? I have this saying that I like to say, which is like, if you're going to work for the man, make sure that the man works for you too, So it's like we need this to be a beneficial two-way street, right? So does your work for you? It's a free assessment. It's available on my website. Answer several questions. You're going to have a personalized outcome, and talk all about kind of the differences between a career, a calling, a job, and what you should specifically be looking for in your career or calling to, really have work that works for you. So you can find that at my website. It's dynamocareers.com, Dynamo careers.com, and then it's /assessment.
fantastic. And I'll add that in the show notes as well, so people have access to it. I'm going to take
Thank
the
you.
assessment.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that resource. Now, people are going to want to connect with you. What is the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, come to my website. There's a contact form. Feel free to reach out and, send a message, dynamocareers.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me under my name, which is Sonia Price, SonjaPrice. And would love to connect with you. So, shoot me a message. Let's talk. Love to see if I can help.
Fantastic. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed having the job search strategies conversation with you. I always love connecting with other experts and professionals. I learn from people that I speak with and just relay that information. So thank you for putting that out in the universe. We're in the business of helping people and we want people to succeed. So thank you for sharing the space with me. And
Oh,
being a wonderful guest and being my first guest for my 7th season.
yeah. Thank you, Liz. It's been such a joy and an honor to be on your show. So thank you so much for having me as a guest and really appreciate our conversation and connecting with you further today.
Likewise. Thank you.